Hello, everyone. Hello. My name is Ken Lewicki. Welcome to the Ask Ken show. It's such an honor to be here today. I'm so glad if you're watching this, I'm so glad that you've tuned in. And yeah, we're going to have tons of fun today on the Ask Ken show. And the thing that I love most about the Ask Ken show is it gives you a forum, a place where you can actually go ahead and find out answers about spiritual questions. Like, where else do you go to do this, right? Where else do you go to get these kind of spiritual questions answered? And what I do is I live channel the answers. So there's two reasons why I do this. One is so people have a place to go ahead and ask these kind of questions about spirituality. And another reason that I do it is to emulate for my students who have taken my channeling training workshops, because I teach people how to channel for a living at channelinginc.com. If you're welcome to go there if you'd like to see what kind of events I offer and trainings I offer. And so I teach people how to channel. I teach them how to be their own psychics. Like, how fun, how cool is that? And this way I do the Ask Ken show to show them, hey, you can do this too. You can eventually get to where I'm at, where you can channel anywhere, anytime, on the spot, in the moment, any situation, any circumstance. Doesn't matter where you are, whether it's, at a busy mall or while you're driving, or whether you're at work or in the grocery store, and of course at home when it's all quiet and peaceful. But why not noisy environments as well? You can do it anywhere, anytime. And we're like 98, 99% spiritual. So why don't we embrace that part of us and be able to do amazing things with those spiritual aspects, with those spiritual parts, and just rock spirituality while we make the most out of this earthly lifetime. How's that sound? That sounds amazing. So that's why I do this. And if you have any questions about spirituality at all, feel free to just type it in the chat and I will see the message come up, and then I will live channel the answers here live on air. Also, wherever you're tuning in from, make sure that you say hello so I could give you a shout out and say, just give you a shout out so your name and where you're from. And I would love to say hi. So I have a few people tuning in from all sorts of different platforms. One of them is Instagram. So I want to say hi to Morgan, and there looks like Angela, and I guess Lim. Anyways, so feel free to say hi. We're going to start with our first question of the day. And our first question is there a time when you don't want to channel your spirit guides? So let me give you a little bit of background about spirit guides. When you die and you cross over, you go to the astral realm to be with your soul family. While you're incarnated, certain members of your soul family help and assist you. These are your spirit guides. So as you go through lifetime to lifetime, when you die and you cross over, you spend all that time in the astral realm with your soul family. But while you're incarnated, certain members will help and assist you, but they can also switch out during different times of your life. And so I've had this question asked many, many, many times. Like, how do I know, like, my spirit guides, are they always in my highest and greatest good? Is everything that I get from them good for me, healthy for me? Should I follow their guidance? And I could say this with absolute confidence. The answer is yes. Yes, 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 yes. The question, though, a lot of people ask after that is, well, how do I know is if the stuff that I'm getting is actually coming from me, or is it coming from someone else? Like, how do I know if I'm influencing the answer, or is it coming from someone else? And so um, the question is, with a little bit of practice and also some formal training usually helps, is you can actually get some discernment between who your spirit guides are and how they're different than your own voice and your own mind and your own thoughts. And they, after a while, with a little bit of practice and training, they're completely different. Your spirit guides compared to your own voice is totally different. Now, in channeling level one, I teach this purposely at the very beginning of my channeling training. And level one is try to get to a point where you always follow your spirit guide's guidance. So have you ever had that time in your life when you're like, okay, you know, do this, do this, do this, and you're feeling like this nudges to do something, and you're like, and you're resistant for whatever reason or procrastinating on it, and then that opportunity passes you by? Has that ever happened to you? Okay, so if that's happened to you, that's probably your spirit guides trying to nudge you to seize that opportunity, to take advantage of, like, to go for it, right? And then also, have you ever had a time in your life when you're like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, and you did it anyways, and then it turned out horribly? Okay, we probably all have, right? So I could say this, in 2012, what happened with me was, I'd been channeling already for like 8 years. I've been channeling total for over 20 years now and teaching people how to channel for that long. And I noticed that with my journey, I was like flip-flopping back and forth between listening to my spirit guides, not listening to them, listening to them, not listening to them. And then I remember in 2012, I made that commitment. I'm like, you know what? I've tried this back and forth thing, and when I don't listen to him, my whole life falls apart and things are horrible. So why don't I just try the opposite for a while? Why don't I try following my spirit guides' guidance 100% of the time, and let's see what happens? And sure enough, wow, like the synchronicities, the serendipities, the magic that unfolds on a daily, regular basis. I'm not perfect at it, but I do try my best to, when my guides are nudging me to do something, I do it right away. When they're telling me not to do something, I have restraint, I hold back. And so it does take practice and, of course, discernment between what's your own stuff and what's your spirit guides, especially when we're in a heightened emotional state. So that part's can be a little bit tricky at times. But there are techniques that I teach my students on how to like breathe, ground yourself, reset yourself, try to get yourself out of the way so that you're not influencing the answer and you just get pure, authentic answers from your spirit guides. Now, the next thing that's really important to know about this is this has happened so many times over my training, like over the 20 years I've been training people how to channel, which is people will come to me and they'll be going through a struggle and they've taken all my training workshops. So there's no excuse for them not to channel, not to check in with their spirit guides. And then after a while, I'm like, hey, did you check in with your spirit guide and see what they suggest about this? And they're like, no, no, no. And I'm like, well, why not? And it takes usually a little bit of digging, but then the truth comes out. And then it's because eventually they're like, well, I don't want to hear their answer. I don't want to hear what they're going to say because I already know what they're going to say. And they're like kind of like a toddler throwing a fit in the fifth row of a grocery store, fifth aisle of a grocery store. And they're like, no, I don't want to listen to my parent or to an adult, right? They're just like, meh. And I get it. I've been there too, but it does take a lot of humility and a lot of humbleness to be able to go, okay, Ken, I know I'm upset. The situation's going on, but let's just check in with my spirit guides and see what their opinion is on this situation, this circumstance. So definitely try to check in with your spirit guides on a regular basis and try to have enough humility to do this. So real basic foundation of channeling your spirit guides is try to go somewhere quiet. And at the beginning, as you're learning to channel, and then find somewhere where you can practice, where you quiet your mind, and then you ask yourself, like, okay, if there's a spirit guide physically around me right now, where might one be? Find out where they are physically around you. They do have technology out there now that could capture your spirit guides on camera. So just know that what you're feeling and experiencing is real. You're not making this up. So that's a really important tip is figure out where they are physically around you first if you can. And then once you figure out where they are, lock in on them and then try to just as best you can to try to receive messages. Like try to identify your spirit guide as they're a person. They're people like you and I in non-physical form. So what's their personality like? What's their demeanor like? What's their attributes and their other characteristics like? Get to know them as a person, and then what area of your life they might be helping you. And then go ahead and start to ask, like, okay, what messages, if you were to give me a message right now, what's the message? Get curious, try to just do your best to start to receive messages. So this is the beginning of channeling training. Um, and then with practice over time, you're going to maybe notice that there's another spirit guide that comes in, and that one feels different than the other one. It's a totally different soul, different person, member of your soul family. And what is this person's characteristics like? What's their attributes like? What's their personality? What area of my life does this other guide help me with? And then what messages might they be giving? So start practicing things like this. These are very practical tips. And then if you're interested in some formal training, just check out my website. I do have workshops that are ongoing on channeling training and all sorts of where you learn really, really, really advanced stuff and more than just channeling your spirit guides. That's one of the many topics that I teach. And then after that, I have a 6-month strategic channeling program, mastermind classes, and it just keeps going and going. So really cool stuff. So I want to give a shout out to a few people. Thank you all. If you're watching this and just tuning in, write down your name and where you're from. And then also I am going to If you have any questions about spirituality, just write those questions in and I will live channel the answers here on air. So I'd like to say a big shout out to Kevin Hughes, one of my favorite people in the whole world, based out of the Calgary, Alberta, Canada region. So thank you, Kevin, for tuning in. And also we have Savikoba and Jazar. So say your name and where you're from. It'd be best to type in. Oh yeah, Angela. Okay, there we go. And then Morgan, Australia. Woo woo. Yeah. Oh, and Amanda's here. Yay, welcome, welcome. Okay, so we have a question. It's Aga, okay, from Indonesia. Great. Oh, we met at the Bali Spirit Festival last year at the Yoga Barn, right on in Bali here. Okay. So we're going to go to our next question. Silvio from Canada. Welcome, Silvio, tuning in from Instagram. Good. So if you have any questions, just type in any questions that you have, and I will live channel the answers. Let's go to our next question. Is how long do souls reside in the astral realm before reincarnating? That's a great question. So let's say Grandpa dies, he crosses over to the other side. How long does he reside in the astral realm before he reincarnates? There's no set time. There really is. That's the short answer. And I would like, so whenever you're listening to somebody who talks about spirituality, whether it's like through a book or social media or YouTube or any kind of those platforms, just be careful about people who say absolutes. I found with spirituality, rarely is it always like this or never like that. And there's usually like either different shades of gray or exceptions to the rule, like stuff like that. And what I've found is there's no real with souls who die and cross like say Grandpa, for example, how long is he in the astral realm before he incarnates again? There's no real set fast rule for that. So what's the shortest amount of time? Usually a few months is what I found, like not less than a few months. I've found like that they'll reincarnate, but it's usually at least a minimum of a few months. So what happens is when somebody dies and crosses over, they go into what's called a containment area. And that's a place where they like incarnating could be pretty hard on the soul. Like lots is going on, lots has happened over that lifetime. So they do like a life review. There's a bunch of healing that happens, all that kind of good stuff. So they're occupied for that first little while. And that's sometimes when you try to channel somebody who's just recently died, sometimes they might not be available at all, or sometimes they might just like pop in, say hello, hey, I'm kind of busy, but I got to go back because they're in that containment area going through the processing of what it was like to be incarnated on this planet Earth. And then once they're in that containment area for a while, then they're released to the general public in the astral realm, and then they're fair game. You could channel them all you want after that. So just keep that in mind as well. That also does influence like how quickly afterwards that they reincarnate. But I've met souls where they haven't reincarnated for hundreds or even thousands of years. And then there's people who say, well, time doesn't exist. Well, time does exist on the other side. It just exists differently. So for example, like my dad died in 2001. And to me, that seems like such a long time, like that's decades. But to him, it's just like a little, it is time. There is time in the astral realm, but it's such a short period in the eons that soul has been alive. So to my dad, like it just seems like a blink of an eye of when he was recently incarnated on Earth. So that's an example of so. But let's say, for example, it could be hundreds of years or even thousands of years before they reincarnate again. And some may never reincarnate. And by the way, if you're watching this, there is a very good possibility you probably will reincarnate again. So one of my goals in this lifetime is I want to try to ascend as much as possible. I want to do as not only as much as my healing work as possible, which I do. I see healers on a regular basis. By the way, if you ever go see a healer, please make sure that healer is doing their own healing work. Why? Because my experience has been that people that are healers that don't do their own healing work is that they tend to get more and more unhealthy as the years go on because they're not actually doing their own spiritual hygiene, spiritual maintenance. And so they're picking up on all people's stuff. They're becoming more unhealthy. And then what happens is when they might have good intentions to heal you, but that some of that spills over onto you, and then you might actually absorb some of that unknowingly from the healer. Doesn't know that, they don't realize that, but that could happen, and I've seen it happen so many times. So I purposely go see healers on a regular basis. Make sure that the healers you go see healers on a regular basis, or don't book with them. And so what happens is these as my goal is to do as much not only healing and clearing as possible, but also to do as much ascension and growth and spiritual upgrades, enhancements, attunements, activations, and all that. And so I'm keep ascending as much as possible in this lifetime, with the hope that not if I incarnate in another lifetime, but when, because most likely I will. How many lifetimes have I had in the past where I'm like, I'm never coming back? And I was like, yeah, but here I am, I'm back again. So I've just succumbed to the fact that I most likely will incarnate again. So what I want to try to do, and I hope you're here with me, and if you are, just give me a thumbs up or amen or a hello or yes, me too. What I want to try to do is in this lifetime, try to ascend as much as possible and grow and evolve as a soul as much as possible, so that not if I come back in another lifetime, but when I do, hopefully I'm going to start from a higher evolutional level as a soul. That's kind of my goal in this lifetime. So anybody with me out there? Woo woo. Couple more people to say hi to. Lexia, say hi. That's great. Anyone else, if you're watching this, just write down your name and where you're from. I'll give you a shout out, and also type any spiritual questions that you have for me that I can live channel here on the air. So that's a great question. Let's go to another question we have. Do your spirit guides always use the same clairs when they communicate with you? So the answer is potentially yes. Yeah. So do they always use the same clairs? So let me give you an example. So there's 6 different clairs. I'm not going to go into them in great details, just because I spend like a whole hours just on that one training. So the 6 main clairs, if you go on the internet, there's like, back in the day, there was 6, and then there was 10, and then there was 12, and then now there's probably 20 something, who knows, right? People are always adding stuff. I like to keep things really simple. I found that a lot of these other clairs can be put into one of these 6 categories. So there's clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairalliance, clairgustance, clairsentient, and also clairgustance. Okay, so let's just do that one more time. So clear seeing, clair, it's clair, it's for clear, like something that's clear, something clear glasses, for example, whatever it might be. So there's clairvoyant, clear seeing. Do you see with where your spirit guide, will they give you an image with your physical eyes? Possibly. I've had that happen only a few times in my life. Most likely, though, they'll give you an image in your mind's eye. So that's clairvoyant. The next one is clairaudient, hearing. They're going to give you a sound in your mind. Will you get an audible sound, physical audible sound? Possibly, but most likely it'll be in your mind. The next one is clairsentient, which is sensing, feeling. There's 2 components to clairsentient. One is the sensations, touch. The other one, like touch or goosebumps or pressure or heat, cold, like electricity, tactile, any tactile sensations. That's all part of the clairsentient category, and also the emotions that you're feeling from your spirit guide. So what's the emotion that you're receiving, and then how do you interpret it? The next one is clairalliance, smelling. You might get a smell in your physical nose, but most likely you'll get it in your mind. Next one is clairgustance, gustance. Clear tasting, you'll either get a taste in your mouth, but most likely you'll get it in your mind. And then the last one is claircognizant. So again, I go through these. That's the clear knowing. It comes quick, it comes fast. I go through these in great detail in my channeling workshops. So here, this is the real important part. If you're listening, stay tuned for this. This is really cool. This is advanced channeling it's an advanced channeling tip that I'm about to give you right now. Okay, so you have a spirit guide. Most people have somewhere between 3 to 5 spirit guides during any one season of their life. The amount of spirit guides you have can change depending on different seasons of your life, and also who you have as a spirit guide could change. Okay, so let's say in this season of your life, a random example, let's say somebody has 4 spirit guides. Okay, so one spirit guide comes in, and that, let's say the spirit guide, where are they? You invite them to come in. Where's this guide? Right here. Okay, and you're welcome to do this while you're listening to me right now. If you're watching this, feel free to like actually try this out. So just take a deep breath. Breathe into your body, relax, and then invite one spirit guide to come in. They might come in on a different side than you. I'm just using this side as an example. They might be behind you or in front of you or to one of your sides. So when you feel their presence, get to like increase your connection with this guide. And then what you do is you feel into this guide and you ask yourself, you get curious, which one of the clairs does this guide like to communicate with the most? Okay, so let's, again, a hypothetical example is, let's say, for example, this is your spirit guide that helps you with career. Okay, and let's say one of your stronger clairs is clairvoyant, so clairseeing, so you can see images in your mind really easy and all that. But this spirit guide wants to communicate to you through clairaudience. So what kind of a, not really a mistake, but what a lot of kind of channelers, psychics, mediums, what they do is they just get really good at their strongest clairs, and then they only use those ones and they negate and neglect everything else. They put all the other ones aside. But that's not what you want to do. What you want to do, a more advanced channeler is versatile and can use all the clairs and not dictate to their spirit guide which one or ones that they want their spirit guide to use. So instead, I want to be in an open state. And when I feel a spirit guide come in, I just want to be like, hey, whatever clair or clairs you want to communicate with me, I'm open to any and all of them. It doesn't matter which one. I'm not going to dictate and tell you, oh, you have to give me a picture, a visual in my mind. That's clairvoyant. Instead, oh, which one do you want to communicate with me? Oh, you're my career guide. In this case, you want to communicate with me what? Clairaudient. You want to tell me what's going on at work, what the situation is, what the circumstances, how to resolve it, how to make amends with somebody, how to, maybe, resolve my work situation. They're trying to communicate to me through clairaudient. So I'm not going to tell them clairvoyant, just clairaudient. Okay. Now, another spirit guide might come in, and let's just, again, hypothetically say it's a female spirit guide and she's here to help you with relationships. And you're like, oh no, I just want you to give me visuals. And she's like, well, I want to communicate to you another clair. And if you're like, no, I just want visuals, just visuals, visuals, visuals. Well, she might want to communicate to you through clairsentient in this example, because she wants you to like feel the compassion for the other person. So let's say you have relationship struggles with somebody, you're having a relationship problem. She might want you to feel understanding and compassion for that person. And, maybe they had a rough childhood and that's why they're behaving the way they would, the way they are. And maybe like have some forgiveness for the person. And she wants you to feel this in your body so you can be more heart-centered and more compassionate and loving and open towards this relationship situation that you have going on. Does this make sense? But if you tried to force her to do the other clair, in this example, clairvoyant, you wouldn't be able to receive the full message of the love and compassion and support for this other person. And maybe that's not just forgiveness for them, maybe it's forgiveness for yourself as well, for allowing yourself to be put in this situation where this situation happened. So just don't force your spirit guides into the clair that you want them to be. Just ask yourself, okay, which clair ask your spirit guides, which clair do you want to communicate to me with, and be like, okay, I'm fine with that. And what you're going to find, this is really cool. So again, this is very advanced training. I hope it's okay. I think some of you can actually take this and actually start to apply it right away. So I hope you do. I want all my students, my goal in teaching people how to channel is to empower them so eventually they don't need me anymore. It takes a little bit of training, just a few short months of training. You could go to my website to find out all the trainings that I offer. And then with like formal training, you're off to the races. And then you could do super, super, super crazy advanced stuff way beyond what you ever could have imagined. And you'll have it for the rest of your life. This isn't one of these trainings that you're like, oh, I just did that, done that, but I don't do that anymore. No, you'll use this all the time for the rest of your life. So what you do is with your spirit guides is most spirit guides have 1 to 2 clairs that they like to use the most. So in my 6-month mentorship program, after my students have taken all my workshops, if they join that mentorship program, that's one of the processes I take them through to help them get to know their spirit guides better and how they actually work with you to try to communicate. And so let's say this guide uses 1 to 2 of these clairs, and then another guide uses 1 to 2 of these other clairs, and then another guide uses 1 to 2 of these other clairs, and so on. And so you start to get to know how your spirit guides communicate with you, what clairs. And so there's a really powerful training that I do, which is you tunnel the clairs. So this is the reason why, if you know the clairs that your spirit guide is communicating with you, then what you can do is go, oh, okay, in this case, it's clairaudience. So let me hear more. Tell me more. What else can you tell me? What else can I hear? Okay, and you're tunneling that specific clair. You're not trying to force it into another one. And then this other one is going giving you feelings or emotions. So that's clairsentient. So okay, good. It's clairsentient. So I'm gonna feel the emotions, feel what the message is, and what are the emotions, interpret the emotions into a message, feel it, and tunnel that clair, go deeper with that clair, go deeper with that clair. And then another spirit guide might be, oh, clairvoyant. Okay, good. Show me more. Give me more clairvoyant. Give me more pictures. Give me more image. Can you elaborate on this? Can you go deep? And you tunnel that clair. Super cool, super fun. Oh, such a great question. So yeah, I love that question. Please, please, please try to practice your weaker clairs. I know it could be a little bit frustrating, but just try to keep it fun. Like, you know, sit down somewhere quiet, invite one of your spirit guides to come in and say, hey, I want to practice some of my weaker clairs. Can you give me a smell? That's clairalience. What's a smell you're receiving from your spirit guide? Try to interpret that smell either in your nose or in your mind. Try to interpret it into a message. Why is the spirit guide giving me the smell? And practice your weaker clairs. Maybe it's clairgustance, maybe it's claircognizant, maybe it's clairalience, or clairaudient, sorry, or clairvoyant, or so on. Okay. Great. So we have Paul tuning in. Paul, welcome, Paul. Paul's pretty awesome. And if you're watching this, if you're tuning in, just write down your name, where you're from. I'll give you a shout out. Whoop, whoop. And also, if you have any questions about spirituality for me, I will live channel the answers here on air. So this is called the Ask Ken Show. I love doing this. It's once a month, and thank you so much for tuning in. Let's go to our next question, which is, what do you do when you feel multiple guides coming at the same time, and they all want your attention? So that's a really good question. Okay, so number one thing, like I've had this question asked me probably almost on a weekly basis, definitely a monthly basis, if not a weekly basis, which is, don't you ever get overwhelmed? Like, don't you, like, isn't it like, as a channeler, and you're so open and you have all these, like, isn't it overwhelming? And I'm like, no, never. So not in level 1, but in level 2, I start to teach more advanced techniques, when I teach you how to channel all the different kinds of souls out there. And then there's a whole bunch of different kinds of beings out there. So the 5 different kinds of souls out there, well, actually there's 6. So I'll talk about the 6. The 6th one's in a different category of its own. So the 5 souls in the astral realm that you could channel are random souls, ascended master souls, loved ones, soul family members, and spirit guides. Okay, so those are the 5 different kinds of souls. By the way, if you're watching this and you like to take notes, I know I do, you're more than welcome to. So the 5 different kinds of souls in the astral realm are random souls, ascended master souls, loved one souls, like your loved ones that you knew that have died and crossed over, and then your soul family members. They might be ancestors, they might not. A lot of times they're not, but they could be. And then there's spirit guides. Okay, so those are the 5 different kinds. And then there's a whole category on its own called lost souls, and those souls are actually in a different realm. They're in the in-between realm. And then also there's animal souls in the animal spirit realm, and then animal spirit guides and all that cool stuff. And then in the level 3, my expert level, I also teach how to channel all different kinds of beings. So there's a whole bunch of different kinds. There's like sprites and fairies and pixies and dragons and like angels and archangels, Lord of the Akashic Records, hybrids. I could go on and on. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of beings out there, and divine beings. They're pretty awesome. Not a lot of people know about divine beings. I teach that workshop in my mastermind class. That's a super cool class. So you want to always know who you're channeling. The number one most important thing about channeling is always know the source, because sometimes there could be potentially things that are not of the light. And if they're not of the light, they could be misleading you, deceptive, taking you off your path, taking you down a path that's not good or healthy for you. And then next thing you know, you're doing this instead of doing that. But when you know your spirit guide team, and that's why I start with learning to channel your spirit guides, I teach that first, because once you know your spirit guides really well, they're your number one go-to people. And then you know a trusted source. You know that they're a trusted source. So if you ever get something that tries to sneak in and you're not quite sure, what do? You go to your spirit guides and you say, hey, is it okay for me to channel this? And they'll either give you like the yay or nay. And then you always listen to them, because they always, always, always have your highest and greatest good in mind. And they're always watching out for you. They always make sure that you're channeling only things that you should, if you ask them. But if you don't ask them, they're just like, it's kind of like a child, going out and playing in the yard and then, just doing all this random stuff. But if you're like not quite sure about something, you would go back in the house and ask your mom or dad and your parent or authority figure like a daycare worker or a grandparent or something like that. Hey, is this okay to do this? And they would either tell you, whoa, no, 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 whoa, stay away. I'm so glad you came to me and asked me about that. Or they'd be like, oh yeah, in this case it's fine. But if you ever come across something that you're not quite sure, just come back and ask me and I'll let you know. So you always go to a trusted source. Does that make sense? But that's why it's important to know your spirit guides first, because when you know your spirit guides, then you can work with them to make sure you're only channeling things that are of the light. And what I want for all my students is to always work and operate in the light, hence the term light worker. Okay, I want you all to be light workers. Do not dabble in the dark. Don't go looking for it. Don't play with that stuff. It's dangerous. You'll get yourself in trouble. You'll hurt others. You'll hurt yourself. It's not good. It's not healthy for you. Just work and operate in the light and only channel things that are good and healthy for you. And that's why a lot of times the like religious people and stuff like that, they're like, oh, like careful, like if you go dabbling in that stuff, you're going to open yourself up to, and they're not wrong. They're not wrong when you don't know what you're channeling or who you're channeling. But when you do know who you're channeling and you're confident with it, then you can make sure you're always operating and working in the light, which is what I do, which is what I teach my students to do and empower them to do, to always work in the light. So the question is, when you feel multiple guides coming at the same time and they all want your attention, what do? So here's a little tip and a trick that I've developed. If you're watching this, you can do this and you can also write it down. Is when I first started teaching people how to channel, I noticed that there was like all this spiritual activity around the person, not their fault, nothing bad, just good stuff usually. And then what would happen is they'd get so confused because there's so much activity going around that when I would try to get them to communicate with their spirit guide, they would be like, oh, okay, I'm picking up on this one. They'd be good for a while and then pick up on this one and then pick up. And they wouldn't be doing it purposely. They would just like be picking up on these souls that are all around them, that some are spirit guides, some might be other kinds of souls. So there's a technique that I do. You can write this down. First thing you do is, especially for beginners as you're practicing and learning how to do this, is you ask all your spirit guides to temporarily step far back. You ask everyone to step far back. Just say, everyone, step far back. And the reason why I have them do this is because then you could do the next step, and this is step number 2 if you're taking notes, is then you can go ahead and sit in spiritual silence. So most of us have had spiritual activity around us all our life, souls, spirit guides, all that kind of stuff, and we don't know any different. But what happens is when I have you do this, where you say, ask everyone to step far back for a moment, you're going to notice, if you're paying attention, you'll notice the contrast, the difference, and it's completely different. So this is what's called spiritual silence, when there's nobody around you, and it's just like, whoa, like complete quietness. It's so cool. Okay, so that's spiritual silence. And then from this place of spiritual silence, when you have nobody around you, what you do is you invite one spirit guide to come in. And so the reason why you do this is because and you can like if you have a certain topic that you want to talk about, yeah, sure, go for it. You can talk about, invite like a spirit guide to help you who, if you want help with career or help with health or relationships or whatever, all that kind of good stuff. So you're more than welcome to. But instead, what I suggest is you do this, is you just let your spirit guides decide which one wants to come in. So your spirit guides are talking to each other and they're communicating amongst each other. Okay. And so they know which one you need the most to come in. A lot of times, kind of, again, kind of like the child analogy, the child is going through a struggle and a fit and all this other stuff. And then the child's like, well, I want this adult to help me. But really, it's another adult, maybe a therapist or a counselor that can help that child the best. Sometimes the child doesn't always know which one that they need the most. And so kind of similar concept is we don't always know which guide we need the most, but they talk amongst each other. And then they're like, oh, this one actually is the one who would help that person the most. So that one comes in. And that's step number 3 is without deciding who, you invite one spirit guide to come in. So again, if you're writing that down, that's step 3, invite one spirit guide to come in. And then step 4 is you're going to physically locate where they are around you. Where are they around me? Oh, right here. And then lock in on that guide and start channeling them. Okay, increase your connection and start channeling them. Now, the cool thing is that when I first started teaching people how to channel 20 years ago, they didn't have the technology that they have now. And back then I'd be like, your spirit guides are real. And they're like, sure, Ken, sure. I'm like, no, they really are. Like, sure, Ken, sure. But now there's finally technology out there that can prove your spirit guides. There's highly sensitive camera systems that we could set up in your room and we could capture your spirit guides on camera. You might have seen them on these like ghost hunter shows and stuff like that. So the technology is still in its infancy, but as the technology improves over the next 5-10 years, we'll be able to capture your spirit guides in even more camera or more details and more like profoundness and all that stuff. So just know that what you're experiencing with spirit guides is real and it can finally be captured on camera. Like how cool is that? Okay. So then the initial question was, what if you get multiple spirit guides that are all coming in at the same time and you're not sure who to channel? So 2 things that you can do is one, you can sit there and go, okay, which one of you is the highest priority? Which one of you wants to come in the strongest? And then you try to discern and figure out, oh, it's this one. And then go ahead and allow that one to like just connect with that one and then ignore the rest for that moment and give you 100% focus on that one spirit guide. Or the other thing that you can do is the process I just took you through, which is just clear house for a while. Just clear house, say, everybody just temporarily step far back, sit in that spiritual silence for a moment, just feel that difference. And then without deciding who, invite one spirit guide to come in. The reason why I do this for my level 1 students is because I want them to practice getting really good at channeling just one guide and one guide only at the beginning. Because sometimes it's kind of like you're learning a new skill set. And if you learn too much, too fast, too quickly, sometimes it's not that it's wrong or bad. It's just that you don't get that foundation really solid. So by asking all your spirit guides to temporarily step back and getting really good at just channeling like one guide at a time and practice just one guide without anybody else in the vicinity, anybody else distracting you, anybody else around, you can really start to hone your abilities. And then maybe later on, like channeling level 2, level 3, stuff like that, then you could start multi-channeling is what I call it. So that's a term that I developed that I created to describe what it's like to channel multiple spirit guides at the same time. I call it multi-channeling. And of course, at more advanced levels, like levels 3 and levels 4, then I teach how to not just multi-channel spirit guides, but also multi-channel other kinds of souls, like those 5 I told you about, or those beings that I told you about, sprites, fairies, dragons, crystal divas, angels, all that kind of stuff. You can channel at multiple times. Okay. One thing I want to make sure that's very clear though, is you are always, always, always in charge when it comes to channeling. You do not have to channel. If you don't want to, don't. If you feel like you're done, you're good or whatever, or it's late at night and you want to go to sleep, just say, no, I'm shut down for the night. I want to sleep. You're always in charge. So again, this is one of the biggest concerns that people have when they're learning to channel at the beginning. They're like, well, or hesitations, like, what if I learn to channel and then now I'm bombarded all the time? No, I don't channel like I leave my channeling abilities open, But if I don't feel like channeling, I don't. Like if there's times when I'm like, meh, it's okay. I'm okay to just not channel for a while. I'm okay to just go live my life. I do. But when I notice the nudge of one of my spirit guides, then I'm like, oh, someone's trying to get my attention. Don't ignore them. Focus on that guide, maybe go somewhere quiet, increase my connection with that guide and see what they want. See if there's, sometimes they're just hanging out. Sometimes they're just like, hey, I'm just hanging out, no big deal. And then, okay, I just continue on with my life. But sometimes they have a message, but I don't ignore them anymore. When they're trying to get my attention, usually it's for a reason, and usually it's because they're trying to give me a message. But if there's times when I don't want to channel, it's okay too. So it's called, the section that I'm talking about that I teach is called Boundaries with Souls. And you always, always, always can create boundaries. You can always be in charge of your life. You eventually you're going to get to a point in your channeling journey where you're never afraid of this stuff. You're never like, worried about this or that because you know what's of the light, what's not of the light, what's, and all that. You can discern that. And I never want my students to live in fear. I want them to live in empowerment. You are empowered. I've taught you how to do this, how to deal with things that are not of the light, so you can continue always working in the light, hence the term light worker. But you don't have to worry about, letting things take you over. You don't have to worry about being bombarded beyond your will. And you definitely don't have to be worried about things that might affect you that are not of the light. They might, but then you know tools and how to deal with them quickly, efficiently, effectively, so that they don't bother you anymore. So great question. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into the Ask Ken show. If you're watching, just go ahead and type in the chat box your name and where you're from so I could give you a shout out. Woo, woo. And also, if you have any questions about spirituality, just type it in the chat box and I will answer the questions here live on the air, live channel the answers. So we have a question for Amanda. She asks, what if you don't know how to channel correctly and don't recognize your spirit guide team? What is the other best ways to make sure you're working in the light to build the confidence? Okay, so that's a really good question. So the reason why I start with getting to know your spirit guides and your spirit guide team is because that is the foundation to channeling. So let's just take a step back. The foundation to all spirituality, in my opinion, is channeling and knowing how to channel and knowing how to channel really well and with confidence and at really high levels. Because if you don't know how to channel, then you're just guessing. You're winging it. It's sporadic, spontaneous. You're making assumptions. You're hoping and you're guessing that, okay, maybe this is what's going on or that's what's going on. And especially if you're working with others and you're trying to use your channeling, if you don't have channeling, you're just, again, maybe just going through the process or making stuff up, or you have no idea really what you're talking about. And it's not your fault. I've been there. I've done that. That was my first early years of when I was learning to channel myself. Is I was like, okay, and I was just making all these assumptions up. So first of all, I'm going to say, get to know your spirit guides really well. Practice learning to channel your spirit guides. I recommend every morning, this is what I do, and this is a recommendation for you. And again, if you're watching this, you can write this down, is I recommend that what you do is you go ahead and every morning before you get up, before you check your phone, before you use the washroom, before you do any of that stuff, this is what I do. I put my hand on my soul right here, and I tell myself I love me, because self-love is super important, super critical. I feel all the things that I'm grateful for, and I breathe them in. I feel that love for me. I feel the great gratitude that I have for being alive, for the bed I'm sleeping on, whatever it might be, the place I'm at, all that stuff, just whatever's coming to me. I feel that self-love and the gratitude. The second thing that I do before I get out of bed all the time, every morning, is I check to see which spirit guides are around me. And then I connect with that guide or guides, see if there's any messages that they have for me. And then I receive the messages, and then I start my day. And then I use the washroom, and then I check my phone, and then I do all that other stuff. But I never ever do anything else unless I really have to go pee or something, and then I'll go pee and come right back and lie in bed for 5 minutes and then do that and connect with my spirit guides. But other than that, it's like, no, I'm very disciplined about it. Make sure that I always tell myself I love me, gratitude, and then connect and channel my spirit guides. And the reason why I do this every morning is because what I've noticed, not just with me, but my students as well, especially the ones in my mentorship program, I'd be like, so when was the last time you channeled your spirit guides? And they're like, oh, like at 8 p.m. at night. And I'm like, 8 p.m. Oh, what happened to the other like 16 or 14 hours of the day? And they're like, oh yeah, right. I'm like, okay, so now your homework's going to be every morning connect with your spirit guides. If you connect with your spirit guides every morning, you're more likely to connect with them throughout the day many times. And that's what I want for my students. So I tell my students, like, I'm nobody special. I'm not any guru. I'm not any master. I'm not any of that. I just love channeling. I love spirituality. And the only difference between you and I is I practice lots. So please, please, please practice your channeling lots. Every time you feel your spirit guide's presence, stop what you're doing, try to connect with them, see if you can try to receive messages, try to practice your clairs, not only your stronger clairs, but your weaker ones as well. And then with time and some formal training and maybe some mentorship, you can really, really accelerate your spiritual growth and your channeling abilities. So now I'm going to give Armanda and the rest of you watching another really, really cool tip. So this is another technique that I developed. I teach it in my channeling level 2 workshop, but I'll teach it here with you today. So sometimes people have trouble discerning if something is good for them or not good for them as they're channeling. So I'm going to get you to do this if you're watching. I know you might be on your phone, or you might be busy doing something, or you might be in a public place. You might not be able to do it. But if you can remember the timestamp of this video and come back to it and then do it when you're on your own somewhere quiet. So what I'm going to get you to do is I'm going to get you to go like this with your hands. Okay, so go like this with your hands if you're able to. And then what I want you to do is feel into a time in your life where something really bad happened. And then watch what happens with the motion of your hands. So feel into that time in your life, something bad happened. Okay. And then I want you to feel into a time in your life where something really good happened, really positive happened, something wonderful and loving happened, something great, something you're really proud of or happy about, and then watch what happens with your hands. Okay, so you're going to notice the first part, your hands probably went slower and more sluggish, more clunky, and all that other stuff. Okay, and then you might notice that the second part, it was faster because it's more uplifting, more upbeat. Okay, and then now, if you feel into something like that maybe isn't good or healthy for you to channel, watch what happens with your hands. You're going to notice that they go slower and icky and more sluggish and all that stuff, and chunkier and clunky and all that stuff. Okay. But if you channel like your spirit guide, so maybe feel into your spirit guide around right now. And where's the spirit guide? Maybe they're right here, or they could be somewhere different for you, but feel into your guide. Don't guess. Feel into where they are around you. And then feel how they feel, the unconditional love, the happiness, the joy. Keep your hands moving. And you're going to feel that your hands are all of a sudden flowing faster, more wider, more flowy, more like, in sync and all that other stuff. Okay. So that's what's happening inside your body. So the question is, you don't have to do this externally every time I had one of my students one time ask me that, oh, Ken, does that mean we have to go around going like this with our hands? And I'm like, no, no. I kind of just chuckled. No, no, you don't have to do that with your hands. It's just a representation of what happens inside your body when you're doing this. So let me give you an example. So let's say, for example, you are, have you ever met somebody that you've never met before? It's your first time meeting them, and they might look all pretty and shiny on the outside and say all these wonderful, beautiful things and all the right words and all that. But there's something in you that's like, yeah, I don't know. I need to just kind of stay away from this person. There's something off about them. Have you ever had that experience? That's your body giving you feedback and telling you, okay, there's watch out for this person. It's not necessarily that they're bad, but they're maybe just not healthy for you or at a right vibration for you. So that's a little tip, is always, always, always listen to your intuition and listen to this gut feeling. If something feels off, it probably is. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's times when it's our own fears and they're unvalid and it's just our own healing and clearing that needs to be done. But a lot of times it's because our bodies are telling us there's something off about this person. But the same concept can be done with channeling souls or beings or things that you're not quite sure. Like, is this thing healthy for you? Okay, so you can ask, like, is this healthy for me to channel? And if it's really clunky and icky, it's probably a no. It's probably not of the light. It's probably not in your highest and greatest good. It's probably not your good intention. But if you notice it's like, woo, okay, flowing and fast and joy and expansiveness and all that stuff, then it's probably healthy and okay for you to channel. Now, a little disclaimer on that is my experience has been is that most times people that what you channel 90 whatever percent of the time, it's fine, it's of the light, it's healthy for you to channel. So I don't want you living in fear and checking this all the time and thinking that I've like what I do, the way I go about living my life, in case you're wondering. So this is how I live my life, this is how I want all my students to live their life, is I always keep my channels open, I never close them down. They're always open. It doesn't mean I'm always constantly channeling and receiving information, but the channels are open so that if a spirit guide wants to come in and they want to get my attention, I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? Good. Okay. Thank you for coming in. I'm not like, closed everything down and living in fear because I'm afraid like this or that might happen or that. No, I just live open and fully open so that I can receive the message from something that is of the light, like my spirit guide, or maybe an angel or an archangel or a dragon or something like that. That's good and healthy for me to channel, but I don't close it down. But then if something that is not of the light comes across my path, I'm like, ooh, what are you? Like, I can feel this instantly. I'm like, no. And then I have techniques. I call it the expulsion command. So I hand that out in channeling level 2 when I teach my students about how to expel things that are not of the light, that are not in your highest and greatest good. But then a disclaimer I tell my students after I teach them this is because I've had my students be like, oh, I use the expulsion command like 20 times a day. And I'm like, what, really? No, you just use it use it on an as need basis. So I might use it for myself, like not including all my sessions that I do and all my workshops that I do. I don't use them every time in my sessions or my workshops, only on an as needed basis, but the amount of workshops that I do and the amount of one-on-ones that I do in a week are a lot. So I do tend to use it quite often in those one-on-ones and workshops. But putting that all aside for my own personal use, I might use the expulsion command maybe once every few months, if that, because it's not, I just only on an as needed basis. And here's the really cool thing. As you're growing in your spirituality, there's two things that I always do with my students a lot every time, whether we meet one-on-one or in a group setting, is I always do two things. One is I always do healing and clearing on the person. So I'm constantly working on clearing them to make them a clear channel, to heal on any stuff that's unresolved, to childhood stuff. I have over 100 different healing modalities that I can do: ancestral healing, past life healing, Akashic Records healing, soul retrieval. I could go on and on and on. There's a whole bunch. And I don't guess. Again, I check what needs to be healed. And I also teach my students how to do these healing modalities. So I do healing and clearing every single time. And I also check to see if there's any spiritual upgrades. And another side benefit, it's not the only reason why I do this for my students, but another side benefit is that what I've noticed over the years is that at the beginning, before they first start coming to see me, or at the very beginning, they're very vulnerable and susceptible to potentially having things that are not of the light attack them, affect them, soul attachments. I could go on and on. There's a whole bunch of different ways that somebody could be affected spiritually. But then over time, with the healing and clearing, because it's hard for them to cling on to you and all that, if you're nice and clear, the energy just passes through you. It doesn't actually have anything, contaminants, to stick into. So that's harder for them to like affect you that way or attach to you that way, because it just slips off you, kind of like Teflon. It'll just slide off of you. But then the other thing that I also do is I also provide spiritual upgrades and enhancements to help reinforce your protection system. That's not an overnight thing. It does take time, but then within a few short years, that person is 1,000 times more protected, more safe. They don't have to worry about this. They get way less spiritual attacks and things like that. But again, going back to the expulsion command, it's not something that you're going to have to do on a regular daily basis, maybe every few months on an as needed basis. Okay. So I have Iron Empath is tuning in from YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in. Train to be a police and to reprimand self for thinking badly of others, not trusting inner gut instincts have been beyond tragic. Yeah. So I can only imagine. She's from Montreal. So welcome. Henny, thank you so much for tuning in. that's one of the really important things of like being an empath, and also trusting your instincts and your intuition. So instincts and intuition are actually two different things. Your instincts are that primal thing that keeps you safe, keeps you alive. You know, maybe you're in a downtown late at night and you're like, oh, if I just cut through this back alley, I'll be able to get to my destination quicker. But your instincts like, no, no, don't go down there. Don't go down there. If you go down there, that path, that something really bad's going to happen. And so that's your primal instinct kicking in. And this comes from caveman days. This comes from way back when there was saber-toothed tigers, that primal part of our brain that keeps us alive, keeps us safe from like ambushes and other things like that. So that, please, please, please listen to your instinct. What intuition is, actually, intuition is quite different. Intuition is either messages that are coming from your soul, it's coming from your higher self, or it's coming from one of your spirit guides, or a combination of your spirit guides, your soul, your higher self, your spirit guides. Like it could be a combination of any one of those. And so as you learn to channel different aspects of yourself, and including your spirit guides, you can really start to hone and harness your intuition to unbelievable levels. And in my mastermind class, after all my students have taken all the levels, they can attend those mastermind recordings. One of the classes that I have is how to increase your intuition and your channeling 1,000-fold beyond anything you could possibly imagine. And I go really, really, really deep into honing and enhancing your intuition. Like it's really, really powerful. And then once you know how to do that, you just basically you're set for life. I don't know about you, but all the great gurus and masters of the history of the world have always been like, oh, follow your intuition, follow your intuition, follow your intuition. But how do you do that? Like how? And I remember for me, I got really frustrated after years of people telling me, oh, Ken, just follow your intuition. I'm like, just screw off already. Stop telling me that. And the reason why I was upset was because I didn't know how. I didn't know the how part of it. But once I started to get into it and dissect channeling and how I can figure out how to access my intuition to its fullest heights, then I teach my students how to do this. I'm like, they're like, what? How cool is that? Like, I can't believe now I know how to access my intuition, and not just a little bit, but insane heights. So that's super cool. So this is the Ask Ken show. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm so glad that you were able to. And I'm going to have one more question that I'm going to answer before the end of the class, end of the day, I mean. How are your spirit guides? How are our spirit guides helping us without us being conscious of it? So that's a really great question. So a lot of times, my students come to me, they've never even maybe heard of spirit guides, they have no idea who they are. And we've all have spirit guides. We've all had spirit guides our entire lifetime. But the question is, if we've had spirit guides all our lifetime, how could they be helping us without us being conscious of it? I remember one time I was driving on a freeway in one of the big cities in Canada, and I was just going my regular speed. It was late at night. I was just going back home, and I'm on a freeway. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this guy just hits me full speed from behind, and he must have been going nearly double the speed of like the speed limit. And apparently, I found out later there was somebody who tracked him down, and the police pulled him over, and he ended up getting caught for drinking and driving. But at that moment, I was like all freaked out, and anything could have happened where he could have hit me from behind, slammed me into the barrier, or flipped my vehicle or whatever. Like so many bad things could have happened, but nothing happened at all other than a little bit of a dent on the back of my car. And because I didn't see him coming, I didn't tense up, so I didn't get whiplash or anything else. Like it was surprising. Even the police and everybody else was surprised that I didn't actually have any like injuries. And so I checked spiritually, and in that case, so not all cases, but in that case, one of my spirit guides did help and did keep me safe from getting injured in that instance. And that's an example of where spirit guides, without us knowing so, can help us in different situations of our life. Of course, that one's kind of an extreme situation, but it could be there's this time that a spirit guide might have helped you with a relationship situation, or a career or work situation, maybe help you get a job or something like that. Like it could be lots of different ways that your spirit guides have helped you over your lifetime without you knowing. So the two main things I do in my workshops at channelinginc.com that I train my students how to do is, one is to actually know and understand what you've been doing your whole entire lifetime. So could you imagine like peeling back the veil and understand the intricacies of what's going on the other side and then learning how to tap into that so you can really enhance your life? So that's the first thing I do. You've been doing this all your life. Everybody's channels, everybody's been channeling all their life, whether they know it or not. Like, have you ever like told somebody a message? Have you ever said to somebody, you know, just said something to them and they're like, wow, how did you know to say that? Like, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Most likely it's because you were either channeling your spirit guide or their spirit guide, and you were passing a message through to them from their spirit guide to that person. That means you were channeling in that moment, and you may not have even have realized it that you were channeling their spirit guide. It's called a spirit guide reading, spirit guide messages. And so that's how beautiful is that. And so when you know what you're doing, then that's the first step. And then the kind of the first step, that's 1A. 1B is actually embracing it and being like, yeah, I'm spiritual and I love this part of me and I'm going to embrace it and not be shy from it, not hide in the closet anymore. I'm going to be like, I rock spirituality. I love spirituality. I'm going to embrace it finally for the first time in my life. Like I'm 98, 99, whatever percent spiritual. So why would I not embrace that big, massive part of me? And this physical part's a very small part of me, but most of me is actually spiritual. And so that's the first part. Then the second part I help my students to do is really, really enhance their abilities way beyond what they were doing before. So being conscious and aware of what they're channeling, what they're doing, that they've been doing all their life. And then second thing is let's really work at stepping up your channeling abilities and enhance them and really embrace this and rock this lifetime. Woo, woo. So who's with me on that? Yeah. My name is Ken Lewicki, channelinginc.com. It's such a pleasure being here with you at the Ask Ken Show. I do this once a month so that you can tune in. And thank you so much for being with me here today. And we will see you all soon.